Well, a prosecutor in Finland is filing an appeal after a court dismissed hate speech charges against a former politician. Joining me now to discuss this is Joy Pullman, executive editor at the Federalist. Joy, welcome back. Always great to be with you. For those who may not be that familiar with this case, if you don't mind, can you briefly just tell us a little bit more about it and why the prosecution is appealing the court's unanimous ruling?
Sure. So Paivi Rasanen is a member of Parliament in Finland, and she's being prosecuted by the top prosecutor in Finland for literally for quoting a Bible verse on Twitter, as well as for writing a booklet explaining classic Christian theology about the fact that men and women are the only people who can be married because that's the only union that produces children. She's being persecuted along with a Lutheran bishop who published her booklet about basic Christian theology about sex. So if these two end up being convicted, when we get to the final stage of the court rulings here, it will make Christianity effectively illegal in Finland and possibly throughout Europe, depending on where that appeal goes. And it really tells us that the identity politics sorts of laws that we have are in direct conflict with the fundamental human rights of free speech and freedom of religion.
Joy, I'm curious, does this appeal surprise you? And also, what do you expect to see happen here?
No, to be honest, the appeal doesn't surprise me at all, because I think people who are on the political left often are a little bit more clear-eyed about the fact that the eradication of Christianity and of free speech and of our constitutional and natural rights is really one of their actual goals. The two really cannot coexist. And so the natural law and the natural order that the U.S. Constitution and other kind of rights-based democracies like Finland uphold, that is incompatible with special protections for identity groups. So it's no surprise to me that the prosecutor has appealed this, and as this case could end up going to the European Court of Human Rights, which is why it will affect not only Europe but very possibly U.S. law.
And also, we know, this case has garnered international attention. Let's talk a little bit more about that and the impact that it's had on religious freedom, not just in Finland, but around the world.
This case is being followed very closely because, as I mentioned, it not only could end up going to the European Court of Human Rights and therefore affecting all of Europe, but also because, again, American leftist folk very carefully focus on foreign, laws and legal developments. And there's a lot of strategy sharing and kind of legal, strategies being shared across the Atlantic on these issues. So what happens in Europe is very likely something that will be attempted and already is being attempted inside the United States. So, for example, we're not immune to this here in the U.S. Here in the U.S., we have, for example, the case of Jack Phillips, the fellow who's in charge of Masterpiece Cake Shop. He went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, and 10 years later, he is still being harassed in Colorado courts for his refusal to help celebrate a gay marriage as a practicing Christian. He couldn't, give that sort of supportive speech to something that, our faith teaches is incompatible, something that's not God's design for humans. So while, this seems like maybe a foreign case, it has very, very likely broad implications. And I think it really helps clarify what's at stake with these sorts of identity privilege laws that are being passed all over the world right now. They are really direct attacks on everyone's equal fundamental right to freely speak and participate in public debates. And that's something Paivi told me personally when we talked as I've been covering this case.
Joe, we probably have about 30 seconds left or so, but I do want to ask you about this, a story that is topping headlines here in the U.S., that leaked Supreme Court draft opinion suggesting that Roe v. Wade will be overturned. Again, this is just a draft, as you know, and it's not the final decision. That said, I would like to get your thoughts on what's been released.
Well, as a woman who has had a number of unintended pregnancies myself, this is a very serious matter, for all people. But just as with the case with Paivi, it's a matter of human rights. And I think it's very clear that if the Supreme Court ends up being susceptible to this clear pressure campaign and attempt to overthrow our system of law and our system of jurisprudence with this leaked document, it will reveal to the nation that the Supreme Court is really not a reliable interpreter of the rule of law and enforcement enforcer of that rule of law, but has become a completely politicized institution. So if the Supreme Court does not stand firm and issue that decision, possibly, amended and improved, but issue the, what the leak shows us was going to be a repeal of Roe versus Wade, then we'll know that the Supreme Court as an institution has become politicized, possibly beyond repair.
Well, Joy, we're going to leave it right there. Thank you so much for your time today and speaking with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.